Hello and welcome to Coasting Country, powered by the science of the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. Coming up in this special edition, all about the 113th Plant Science Day. We talk to Brian Hulbert, Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture, about how the state's agencies work with one another. Dr. Gudaz Malai gives us an update on new exotic ticks making their way into the country and Connecticut. Robert Mara provides an update on the continuing battle against beech leaf disease, and we catch up with members of the public as they have plants identified and plant diseases diagnosed. But first we catch up with Dr. Jason White, Director of the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, and his opening remarks at this year's Plant Science Day.
The biggest challenge that we as a state agency and most state agencies have faced in the last 2 to 3 years has been what was called the silver tsunami, although I'm a little silver, I haven't retired yet. But most state agencies were anticipating losing between 25 and 35% of their staff to retirement over this last 2 or 3 year period, and that's exactly what happened to us. Our general funded staff is about 70 positions, and of those we had 24 retirements. And I just have the names listed up here, but you can see they were across our scientific support, our technicians, and administration. What we've done, we've been very aggressive over the last 1.5 to 2 years in refilling all of those positions. So of those 24 positions that were vacated by retirements, we actually have hired 35 staff. And again, across all different categories. Now some of those positions were new, which I'll show you in a minute. We had three positions from the Office of Invasive Aquatic Species and 3 for recreational marijuana that were added. But we essentially filled every single vacancy that was created and then added additional positions. So we really hired the best and the brightest, and I encourage you to spend some time talking to our staff today to see what we've been working on. This is just an update on some of the things that we do. We are a state agency, although our primary mission is research. We also have surveillance and regulatory programs, and that's just kind of laid out here, all the different things that we do separate from research. Our 4 core areas, for those that aren't familiar: agriculture, the environment, food safety, and public health. As I mentioned, about 70 of our positions are funded by the state, your tax dollars. But our total staff is around 110 because we receive federal funding, which is what you see here. So our total agency funding is about a little over $14 million, but only about $8.5 million of that comes from the state of Connecticut. The rest is federal dollars that are either competitive grants that our staff go for or pass-through funding from other agencies. So one of the things that you'll hear about very shortly is the adult use marijuana or cannabis program. We have a presentation on this coming up, but I just wanted to highlight that when I spoke last year, the 3 positions were open. Now the 3 positions are filled, and you can see the names and the pictures of the staff there. We work obviously very closely with the Department of Consumer Protection, their drug control division on this program. And our role is as the state regulatory laboratory. So we don't handle any samples from growers. We handle samples that come from state inspectors for a whole variety of reasons, either surveillance or complaints or audits, things like that. So as of today, in this last year, since July of last year, we've handled about 117 different samples that have come in. And the samples are, you name it, all different varieties, from vapes to plant material to food products. So you'll hear more about that in a few minutes from Anuja. One of our exhibits in the barn is on our new Office of Aquatic Invasive Species. I also presented this slide last year, but again, we didn't have any positions filled. So now we have three scientific staff over here. So this was an office that was created legislatively, and again, you can check out the barn exhibit, and the staff is there to fill you in on all the details. One other new thing that I did want to mention, I actually just added this slide last night because we just found out that we were awarded a CDC Center of Excellence for vector-borne disease. This was a grant that we applied with. Cornell University is the lead institution, but we're one of the co-institutions, and our team here will be working very hard on this program. So it's a 5-year grant for $10 million In terms of what comes to the Ag Experiment Station, it's probably about $3 or $3.5 million to fund vector-borne disease research. Yeah, so it's very exciting. So we'll probably do a press release Friday. So you guys are getting this before the press release. But you can see all the collaborators there, and our vector-borne disease program comes on two tracks. We have the research and we have the surveillance, but they clearly overlap, and this program is going to really exemplify that. And there's just some more of the details, but I think I'm running short. So we've got 2 construction projects we're working on. Our Valley Laboratory, which is up in Windsor, this project is just about ready to begin. We had to get some additional funding from the state this past session, and we were successful getting another $10 million because of increased costs and inflation. But we now have $36 million to renovate the existing building and then build a new laboratory facility off the back that's about twice the square footage. It'll be state-of-the-art facility. I think we've got 38 geothermal wells and solar. It'll be about 80% energy efficient. And with any luck, we'll be starting construction in less than a year. And then in New Haven, we also have a greenhouse project that's currently out to bid. It's a $1.2 million project that'll renovate some of the greenhouses that are there. They date back many, many decades and are in need of renovations.
In about 15 minutes, please join us in the...
Just go stand next to him. But he's doing like...
We're talking with Brian Herbert, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture here in Connecticut. Commissioner, thanks ever so much for the interview. Tell us about some of the challenges that the state faces when it comes to things like climate and, and how the agencies are working together.
Right. So this is a really interesting time in agriculture in our state and in our nation. Right. We used to have the normal challenges and what I would give to go back to those days. But we had, 50-degree weather in February followed by minus 10-degree weather. We had a late deep frost in May. We had a cool, almost drought in June, and then flooding in July. So these challenges are really, really difficult, and farmers don't have the tools necessary to deal with them. And so working with partners like the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, partners like the Yukon Extension, we are trying to develop the toolkit and build in these new tools that these farmers will need in order to be successful. One of the things that we asked for at the legislature 2 years ago was to reinvigorate the Governor's Council on Agricultural Development and recreate it as the Governor's Council on Ag Development and Innovation, so that we're looking to the future and preparing the tools for that. And importantly, the previous iteration of the Governor's Council was the commissioner was the chair, and the Farm Bureau and Yukon Extension were the vice chairs. We actually moved the Farm Bureau down to a regular member and invited the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station to be the second vice chair to show the 3 agencies working together to best suit and address Connecticut's challenges.
Tell us a little bit about the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station. It is, I understand, the oldest agriculture experiment station in the country. That in itself must be wonderful to have here in the state, and obviously all of the expertise that comes with it.
Well, and they're great partners, and obviously we're here at Plant Science Day, lots of people, members of the public here. So it demonstrates, the role that they play for the general public. I mean, you talk about ticks and mosquitoes and how important that is for members of the public, but then you can walk around the experimental gardens and crops. And the research that they're doing to solve some of these challenges, they wouldn't happen at a Department of Agriculture. That's not something that we are built with our mission, and so we rely on this partnership, and the farmers rely on this partnership. What we've done is we use our grant dollars to fund the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station to do some of this experimental work, and then roll it out into production and actually out to Connecticut's farmers.
How important is it for there to be interagency, so like cooperation? We
want to make sure that we're solving the problems together and that we know what the other hand is doing. And so again, one of the reasons why we brought the Ag Experiment Station into the leadership of the Governor's Council on Ag Development and Innovation is to reflect that.
Cannabis and hemp, two sort of like products which have now become sort of like, certainly cannabis has become legal, obviously a separate issue, but the growing of it, and hemp of course is a big thing here. Talk to us a little bit about both of those, because obviously they have their own regulations, they have their own requirements, but again, your agency and the other agencies are sort of like all together dealing with these new products.
Cannabis is a Department of Consumer Protection agency responsibility. and they're rolling out their program and setting it up in an amazing fashion. But when we started the hemp program in 2019, one of the first bills in Governor Lamont's administration demonstrating how important it was to him to get that across the finish line and get Connecticut farmers access to this new crop. A lot of questions, right? A new crop to the state, relatively new to the nation. That's where vigorous scientific research comes into play. What genetics do you need? What seed should you be buying? How to manage the crop? What pesticides or fertilizers or herbicides do you need in order to make sure that you get a crop at the end of the year? Importantly, you've got to test the crop. We call it a hot crop that's over 0.3% THC. We don't do the testing in the Department of Agriculture. So we were able to contract with the Connecticut Ag Experiment Station, a local provider, and say, send your sample there, they can do the testing. So let's get those connections made so that that farmer now knows the Ag Experiment Station is another resource for them and their farm challenges.
The big reason for the population decline is because of water and plastics.
So we're talking to Dr. Gudaz Malai, who's the director of the tick monitoring program at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. Talk to us about the fact that just recently here in Connecticut and your department received 4 live exotic ticks which are new to the state. Why is that a concern?
We have several reasons to be concerned about having these ticks. The first reason is that these are exotic ticks, and once they arrive into the United States, we don't know what their fate is going to be. The main concern right now we have is that as our residents travel to international destinations, when they are encountering these ticks bite them, and there is a potential they might contract diseases that they have not been used to it. And then if they get sick at their international destination, they will have challenges getting proper medical care. And when they come here, similarly, because our physicians may not be familiar with the diseases that these ticks carry, therefore there will be confusion and difficulties with regards to treatment. And the other issue that we are also concerned is that once these ticks land here in Connecticut or in the United States, the problem is that because of changes that we are seeing in the climate and higher temperature, regardless of where these ticks coming from, they find a suitable habitat and suitable environment for themselves, and therefore there is a good potential that they can continue their lives here and start establishing population. In recent years, as we have reported in the past few years, we have seen at least 3 invasive ticks landed at our shores and immediately started establishing populations. Now we have major challenges with the diseases they transmit and the problem that they create both for human lives as well as wildlife. So that's another problem that we are very much concerned.
The other thing, of course, is how are they getting here into the country? Just talk to us about that. You're talking about international travel. So what happens when people are traveling internationally?
So when people travel internationally, they usually go to areas that are scenery. They visit a sanctuary, animal sanctuary. They go for horseback riding, all sorts of outdoor activity. And because of that, they are exposed to ticks and tick bites. And then once they get those ticks on themselves, quite often those ticks go unnoticed, and then they are brought to the United States. This is one way of tick importation, unintentional importation of ticks to Connecticut and to the United States. There are other ways they might be coming through animal importation or even agricultural goods and products. Through them they also arrive here. One of the tick species that we have here you can see on the picture, that is the Asian longhorn tick. Still we do not know how that tick got into the United States. Now it has become a major problem. So to summarize, there are several means through which these ticks could hitchhike and come and become a major problem for us.
You said earlier, obviously, if they get into our environment, they're going to cause a problem. And of course, it only takes a few of them to start a new population. It's not just a danger, a public health risk to people. These could also have significant impacts on domestic pets, but also farm animals as well, couldn't it?
Correct. That's a very important fact. A good number of these invasive ticks end up being the problem for veterinary health. Wildlife and domesticated animals and animal husbandry. The Asian longhorn tick as an invasive tick is a prime example of that, because although we don't have any evidence that this tick is able to transmit some of the diseases of human concern here in the United States, even though we have isolated these disease agents from the tick, but that doesn't mean that they are capable of transmitting that. But at the same time, we already know that this tick is a major problem for cattle industry in Midwest and Southeastern United States, and because they transmit a disease agent called theileriosis, and that's a major limiting factor in addition to transmitting the disease agent, because the sheer number of ticks on animals is far greater than what we found ourselves because of their exposure, the body mass and all those things, and exposed body. Therefore, any animal that we capture, we see hundreds of ticks on them versus a couple of them on ourselves. Therefore, the sheer number of this many ticks feeding on that causes anemia and all sorts of blood loss and health concern, even if they don't carry disease agent. It's not just a disease agent.
You're out there, you're monitoring these things, but what can the public do to help?
Public have to realize that when they are leaving Connecticut and going to, or leaving the United States, going to international destination, so they are not escaping from ticks here and going to a safe place. They have to realize that anywhere in the world, as far as I know, they go, and if they go for outdoor activity, they will be exposed to tick bites. Therefore, they have to take the same precautions with regards to tick checks and other precautions to protect themselves, and if they remove the ticks, and make sure that they destroy before they land in the United States at their destination. And once they get here, and if they discover any tick, they have to be extremely careful not to let them those ticks go to the wild, because they have potential to start establishing populations. The best way for them would be to put in a secure container, keep it in a freezer or so, and then bring them to us so that we can identify, we can determine what species they are, and then we can further test them to make sure that they are not at risk.
Dr. Robert Mara, Associate Agricultural Scientist, Plant Pathology and Ecology at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. Bob, thanks for talking to us. Of course, we've spoken to you in previous podcasts about beech leaf disease. 2019, it was first noticed here in Connecticut. Where are we 4 years on?
Well, now it is found throughout the state, not as prevalently as it is found in the southern 4 counties, but we do have it in pockets, quite extensively in pockets in the 4 northern counties, Litchfield, Hartford, Windham, and Tolland counties. Similarly, it is now found throughout Massachusetts. So the last time we talked, it was only in coastal Massachusetts. Now it's all the way to the New York border. It's found in southern New Hampshire. It's found extensively all the way up into Maine. It's down in Virginia. It's in New Jersey, all of Pennsylvania, nearly all of Pennsylvania. Interestingly, in Ohio, it is still not found south, much further south than where it was first found.
Talk to us about your DNA fingerprinting system that you were putting together, because this is obviously part of your research in the hopes to obviously, I suppose in some way find more information about this nematode, the way it transits. Talk to us about where that is.
Right, so unlike banding birds or using other kinds of morphological markers, for small organisms like nematodes and fungi, We don't have those options, but we do have the option of using molecular markers that are neutral, that are going to vary depending on just random events. And the marker system that we use for this nematode is called a fingerprinting system. It's based on something called microsatellites. I probably don't have the time to go into that, but these microsatellites are scattered throughout all of our genomes. We have microsatellites, hundreds of them. 13 of them are used in human forensics. I'm using 17 markers that are scattered throughout the nematode genome, and that allows us to trace pathways of spread of the nematode. Now, I say that, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We've been developing the marker system, testing it, and now we're able to deploy it at a much larger scale. It'll also allow us to study how variable this nematode is in North America compared to its putative subspecific sister subspecies in Japan. So we're going to now see if we can use these markers on the Japanese nematode, where the pathosystem clearly is a co-evolved pathosystem, not causing the kinds of extensive spread and decline that we're seeing in this system here on our Native American beach.
Let's talk about Japan. In 2024, yourself and people from the US Forest Service will be going to Japan. Specifically, as you were just talking about, obviously beach leaf disease. Talk to us about what it is you hope to get out of that trip.
Okay, so in Japan, because the nematode is not really a problem, it's not even a nuisance, there's been very little study done on it. In fact, almost none. And there's no funding to do any studying on it because it's not a problem. On the other hand, a very closely related species, if not the same species that we have here, is of great interest to us here and to our European partners. And so we're going to go to Japan and collect more samples of the nematode. I already have some in my lab now. They're all dead, but they're allowing me to look at the DNA sequences of these Japanese isolates to see really how closely related or not they are. When we go to Japan, we're going to collect more samples. We also want to isolate plant tissue so we can study the pathosystem at the interaction level. What is it about the disease as it found in Japan and Japanese leaves? What is it about this disease that allows it to remain at low levels, not cause decline, not cause the kind of aborted buds that we see with in the North American situation?
There is no natural predator that we know of, obviously, for this nematode, but there is some chemical interventions that have proven to be reasonably successful. Talk to us in particular about potassium phosphite.
So, of the chemicals that have been tested that actually do kill the nematode, the only one that's really effective in an experimental setting is something called fluopyram, which is really a strong nematicide, but has a lot of concerns environmentally because of the fact that if it gets into water systems, which it clearly would, it can cause a lot of toxicity to marine organisms. The polyphosphite is just a dipotassium salt of phosphorus acid. Phosphorus is a normally naturally occurring compound. This is in the form of a phosphite. Applied as a soil drench, it gets taken up into the tree. We don't know for sure the mode of action, but it seems as though it is enhancing the tree's ability to withstand the nematode's presence in the buds. And that means that the nematodes are not able to feed off of, it's not able to change the structure of the cells in the buds that allow those nematodes to overwinter and feed. And if you do that, you disrupt the life cycle of this nematode, because they need to be able to overwinter and reproduce so that when the buds flush open into leaves in the spring, they then are there to basically start their life cycle all over again. So that is what we suspect is the mode of action of the nematode, of the polyphosphite 30. We're not completely sure yet, but that is what we're suspecting at this point.
Do you have any other skip whorls that are doing the same thing? Or is it
No.
just this one?
Just this one tree. The other shrub, whatever this is.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's three of them right next to each other. two of them are doing bad. The other one's doing good. The center one, but the other one that's not doing well is like it's kind of died off in the bottom. It lost all its leaves because it's not getting any sun. But this one's getting some sun, and it's just it's weird. The leaves stayed on it, and it's just kind of dead. I don't know.
All right. How about cucumbers? Should I be cutting the leaves off of cucumbers?
Yeah, that's what I noticed when I first grabbed it. I looked
Take
at
the
that.
cucumbers.
We're gonna. That's a sign of like an infection.
Oh,
Like
really?
this
Oh my God.
black ring.
Yeah, the soil needs to be tested.
Would you mind if we take this in to take a sample?
Sure.
So I'm gonna have
The garden bed. I just put the garden bed together. But all I did was. Yes, that's.
So if there's no flowers, there's probably no potatoes.
Yeah, that's a wait. Yeah.
Ah.
No.
Or maybe you can try it. Maybe I'll wait.
Don't you think you
I
can?
planted potatoes, I couldn't tell you
Yeah,
that. I
that's
forgot.
possible.
Maybe I might get some new potatoes.
You might get the little ones, which you are calling new. Yes.
The area shaded? Just shaded area or like a full sun?
The one with the flowers is getting full, so the ones in the back, not so much.
Yeah, just wait. Yeah, just wait maybe 2 weeks. I think you're getting.
Yeah. All right.
On that one, but dig and don't give up on the other one. Dig more.
And what
You got to dig a little more.
So they're carnivores, right?
Ladybugs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they eat aphids. That's why they're good.
Oh. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And no other, any other?
Praying mantis might be fun.
Oh, I have praying mantis in my yard, actually.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be,
That's another one that eats other insects. So you
and would I
have
be able to keep it in like a little?
in a little terrarium? Oh yeah. There's plenty of hobbyists out there that do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I have, between me and my neighbor, we have I see them every once in a while,
Yeah.
the praying mantises. They're
Yeah, you'll
just,
see the egg cases sometimes in the fall and winter. Actually, if you cut down a Christmas tree, sometimes you'll find the egg case in the Christmas tree. Butterfly, any butterflies.
And so it's estimated that we need to establish an additional 1.6 billion stems of milkweed in what's called the breeding pool.
That's all from this edition of Coast and Country from this year's 113th Plant Science Day. If you want to find out more about the work and services of the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, then visit their website at ct.gov/CAES. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.